So, if you're new to the whole Camino thing, and particularly if you're female, one of the things you might be worried about is safety, walking alone on the Camino. This week, we are very lucky to be able to be talking to Sara Dhooma. Welcome, Sarah, who has walked about a dozen Caminos on her own. So, I thought we'd get some great advice from Sarah this week on women walking the Caminos alone. So, that's coming right up. So, Sarah, how many Caminos have you walked? Is it about 12?
Maybe more. I have to count
More,
them
you're not
up.
going to admit to it. And have you always walked alone?
Um, yes. Well, I've always started out alone. I did walk half of the Camino Frances with my mom, and there
Mm.
has been times on Camino where I've met a fellow pilgrim or two that I've clicked with, and we've walked similar stages. But generally, yeah, I'm a solo walker.
Okay, so I mean, on the sort of online forums and Facebook groups and things, a lot of women, quite understandably have concerns about walking on their own. As a guy, it's very hard for me to sort of comment on that, but I've noticed on the Caminos that I've walked, a lot of women will kind of buddy up, which is a good thing, with another woman, and you see women walking together. I just wondered if perhaps you could share some tips on, maybe how safe is it? Do you feel safe? What are some of the ways to feel safer?
Well, I've done a lot of traveling and international backpacking in my past. For example, when I was 24, I traveled by myself with a tent for 6 weeks in Africa from
Wow.
Cape Town up to Nairobi. And that was back before smartphones. And there was maybe a little bit of internet available in the capital cities of those countries. So I'm a bit of an anomaly that I've been kind of doing a lot of solo stuff, but it's different for women who are setting out to do the Camino and they've not kind of been on their own on such a long journey. And I understand it can be scary and very uncomfortable. Um, because you don't have the safety net of somebody is necessarily expecting you to be somewhere at a
Mm.
certain time, and so nobody would know if you were or you weren't um, on track with what you're doing. So there are different ways that you can mitigate this. One way is there's lots of Wi-Fi and cell service along the Camino. So if you have someone at home that is maybe keeping track of your progress, it might kind of alleviate some fears if you
Mm.
kind of set a check-in time with them. That way they know if there's a problem or something has come up. Another thing you can do is there is a new app in Spain, if you're walking in Spain, called Alert Cops, and you can put that on your phone. And this way, if you run into any trouble, you can get English language help. And I'm not quite sure how it works, but I think they can kind of figure out your location where you are and come for assistance. Also, when I walk, I always have a whistle on my backpack.
Mm.
Now, whistles don't necessarily mean it's going to save you in a situation. It's just an extra tool for safety. If you know how to blow a whistle, SOS, if a lot of people know the SOS and they may come to your aid. Um, Also, I don't like to walk at night. I try to avoid walking in darkness hours. Morning darkness is usually okay because there aren't so many people out and about. It's the darkness after dinner time because sometimes when people have been drinking, they make bad choices, and perhaps it could be something innocent, but someone who's been drinking might want to chat you up, and
Mm.
it can feel like a very unsafe situation. So I always try and get tucked into the albergue when it gets dark. And then if I'm going to go out at night from the albergue, it's always better to go with some other pilgrims. And it's also more fun to go out with some other pilgrims if you're going to go for dinner or a drink. If you're by yourself, then it's good to go out somewhere close by, not walking too far around the city. Also, when I get into a big city, I don't look like I'm lost. I try and look very confident as I carry
That's a
myself
good
through the
tip.
city.
Yeah.
Even if I feel lost, I just look very confident. When I withdraw money from an ATM, it's always during a busy part of the day when the bank is open. That way, if the bank eats my card or there's any kind of problem, I can get assistance right there. I don't ever take out any money at night because that could be a danger point. And yeah, and also I think ahead of scenarios that if I ran into trouble, what would I do? So I try and think out a solution. That way, if a dangerous situation happens, then I have in my mind the plan that I can set automatically into motion. So if my backpack gets stolen, what are the steps I'm going to do if someone is and if I feel unsafe in a situation, what are my steps, etc.
No, that's fantastic advice, and I think that idea of sort of thinking through scenarios. I mean, as you were saying that, I was thinking of my boating instructor many years ago. You know, when I was learning to drive a big motorboat, and we'd be driving around Sydney Harbour, and he'd say, "Okay, what would happen now if the engine failed? We're 100 meters from this shore. The wind's blowing us onto the shore. You know, what are you going to do?" So, and I think if you have that mindset, you know, you're naturally thinking, "Oh, I'm coming into an area here which could be a bit spooky, you know, whether it be a forest or something." That's interesting. Can I ask a question that I know a lot of men wonder about? And sometimes men are worried about how to interact with a lone female pilgrim. So let me paint a scenario. I'm hiking along. In the distance, I see a woman walking ahead of me, you know, a few hundred meters or something. Going through my mind is, heck, if I maintain this distance, she might think I'm stalking her or something. I don't want to make her feel uncomfortable. Should I stop and have a break, have a drink of water? You know, should I speed up maybe and pass her so I'm in front of her? Would that feel more comfortable? But then she's going to be like, "Who's this guy closing in on me quick?" I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it, but you know, quite a lot of guys I think are quite sensitive to not wanting to make people feel uncomfortable. What would you say to that?
I I I I think rather than the most important thing is don't
No,
startle
yeah, yeah,
anyone, whether it's
yeah.
a woman or not.
Mm,
So if you're coming up behind someone, sometimes they're lost in their
mm,
thoughts. Just try and make some noise
mm,
or do like a friendly hello or a shout
yeah,
out.
yeah,
And then perhaps as you're going by, issue like a buen camino so they
mm,
know that you're a pilgrim, and then just carry on with whatever speed is
mm,
comfortable for you.
yeah. And I think if anyone's watching this and you've never walked a Camino, please don't think that you know, you're going to feel threatened all the time. You're not. I mean,
No.
it's a wonderful community. It's this mobile community where people, I guess I'm coming at it from the perspective of just wanting to look out for each other.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and very often if I'm walking along and there's a female pilgrim sat by the side of the road or something, and I'll always make a point of saying, "You okay? Everything all right?" But you know, make it clear that I'm continuing on. You know, I'm not stopping to chat you up or anything.
Yeah. Just read the situation.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a good advice, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
we should all be pretty good at reading body language and stuff. Yeah.
Uh, like uh, well, everyone will know that you're a pilgrim because you'll have a big backpack.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the local guys, or it could be local anyone that it doesn't they're not wearing fitness clothes, so they're not out for a jog, or they don't have their dog with them, or they're not with a stick or a backpack, and you're just kind of like, are they following me or are they just out for a stroll?
Yeah.
That's the time it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, I can remember walking with my wife one time, and we sort of walk apart a little bit because, it's very hard to walk at the same pace as other people, but she would always like to be within sight of me. And I think she was ahead at one point, and she was sort of walking through some woods, and there was a couple of young local guys there, a bit suspicious looking characters, made her feel a bit uneasy. So yeah, I think it's just common sense. Be careful.
Yeah.
So for a first Camino, what would you say to any women watching who are thinking of walking a first Camino? Because when people ask me, is it better to go in a group or on your own? I kind of naturally say you'll get a much richer experience walking on your own, but hey, I'm a guy. So what would you say to a woman?
Well, I've walked all over the country of Spain
Mm,
and parts of
mm,
Portugal and France, and the amount of incidents where I've had a negative interaction with
mm,
someone are very low. It's very low probability that you're going
mm,
to run into any problems.
yeah.
I think if I spent the same amount of time that I spent on the Camino walking around a large city like New
Mm,
York or
yeah.
Toronto or Paris, I would have a higher number of negative incidents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I wouldn't worry so much about the Camino, and
Mm,
not let that be a deterrent for not going on the walk.
okay.
And if you are feeling uneasy, then link up with some walkers you meet along the way.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Sarah. So thank you so much for talking about it. Quite a sensitive subject, but I think it's an important one because it's one that does get talked about quite a bit online. And I think, as you say there in your summary, you feel less safe walking around big cities at home. And
Hmm.
generally, the Camino does feel very safe, and like you generally do feel that everybody is looking out for you. And
Yep.
I can remember responding to someone on a forum a while ago. I think it was a mother saying, look, my daughter's thinking of walking on her own. She was in her mid-20s or something, is it safe? And I think my response was, there's going to be like a whole bunch of grandparents looking out for her, don't worry. Because, everybody does kind of look out for each other.
Hmm.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Sarah. Excellent feedback on an important topic, I think. And where are you going to be going next on your next Camino?
Most likely finishing off the Vézelay route in France,
Yeah.
and then continuing on through Spain on some other little obscure ways to get to
I bet
Santiago.
you'll find some obscure ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for joining us, and thank you everyone else for watching this video. These videos come out every Tuesday evening, or that's Sydney, Australia time. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. And thank you again, Sarah.